Namaskar. Welcome back to the weekly online class. Festivals bring joy. This year, we are adding wisdom to the celebration, gifts that last a lifetime. Stay tuned for details. Now, let us continue with chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita.
ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Any questions? Okay, what we discussed last time was the ability to work in a spirit of worship. Whatever it is that you're doing, if you do it worshipfully, then it becomes worship. But if you go on a pilgrimage or pray or perform a ritual with your mind on the world, it doesn't help. It becomes mundane.
Absolutely basic. What do you then mean by worshipful attitude to work? I'm going by that sentence only. If you have worshipful attitude to work, if you're working for a client, for example, then beyond the client, how do you then increase it more? That's what I mean, if it's a client or your friends, or I mean, you're not literally the same business guys or anybody else. What do you then mean by worshipful attitude towards it?
See, first of all, when we go out to work, what do we want? Huh? Profit, right? You want a return to yourself. What is worship? To dedicate that activity to something other than yourself. All right? So it can begin with your working for your family welfare, that is slightly beyond yourself, or it can stretch to community, your organization, country, the world itself. And the last is to God. So when you understand that God has given you this ability, whatever that ability is, and in a spirit of gratitude, you offer your work back to God as your thanksgiving, that is worship in the true sense. So there is complete dissolution of self. Self doesn't come into it at all. So examples are given of Shabari giving berries to the Lord, of Sudama going and offering poha to Krishna. There is total disillusion. Now when it comes to us, there is no disillusion only, there is all me. So even when puja is done, or even when you go on a pilgrimage or you do worship, so-called worship, that I factor is there all the time. The ego is there. So worship is complete dissolution of the ego. It's not possible to do it, but at least you can strive for it. And one way of doing it is totally focusing on the action and not thinking of the result. So even if the result doesn't come, it's fine. You've put in the effort and you find fulfillment in the effort, satisfaction in the effort. But if you are dependent on the fruit, then if the fruit doesn't come, which in all likelihood may not come, it's not in your hands, then there is disappointment, there is frustration, there is bitterness, all that comes. So then we looked at how important it is to match guna with karma. Means your vasana, your tendency, your inclination must be in line with the action, or the other way around. The action must be in line with your vasanas. Then we looked at what is karma. What is karma? Obligatory action. What is vikarma? Action that violates your conscience. And akarma? Huh? What is akarma? Correct, Atman. See, what we learn from this is, almost all of you were there last Wednesday. You remember we did this verse? Karma, vikarma, akarma. And we elaborated on it. Akarma is that inactive principle that enables all activities. Why did it not occur to you? I'm not criticizing. See, we need to understand. Why? Because of, it could be one of two reasons. That you were not listening only then. You are physically present, your mind is somewhere else. So, there is no intake. Or, you forgot. Why did you forget? Because, it's like a ping pong ball that comes only to take off. Why? Because your mind is so full of mundane things. I have to go home, I don't know whether the train will be on time, there will be traffic on the roads, this is what I have to do tomorrow. And all this is clogging your mind to such an extent that a new thought, and that too thought of spirit, which you are not familiar with, which you have no desire for, it bounces off you. That's why when we bring it up again, you have not remembered, but when I say it, at least then it should register that we said it last week. There are times when we don't even listen. And this is not pertaining to the Gita, anything. You may be in a meeting and very clearly something is said. You don't even remember. Why? Mind is gone somewhere else. So, our practice, one of the things which makes it worshipful, which makes your action worshipful, is focus on the present all the time. Then what happens? The past doesn't come and infiltrate into the present. The future doesn't come and spoil your present focus. You're totally there every moment. This is what a child does. Have you seen a child? Whatever the child does, 2-year-old child, 1-year-old child, it is in the present. 5 minutes back, it may have cried over a hurt. Now it's not hurting. The child is 100% happy. So that is something we need to learn. And then we saw verse 18. One who sees action in inaction means one who sees the capacity for action in Atman, the potential for action in Atman, and sees inaction in action. Whenever you see action, you understand it is Atman that is supporting it. So whatever happens in the world, you are connected to Atman, Spirit, God. You are not concerned with things of the world that come and go. And that is how you achieve that state of serenity, samam, samatvam. It's constantly hopping on it. In the midst of all this chaos and the change and the noise and all these disturbances that are going on in the world, you are in an oasis of peace and tranquility, then you've achieved it. Saha buddhiman manusheshu. That person is wise among human beings. That means all of us are utter PhD in fools. If anybody asks you, what are your qualifications? PhD in stupidity. That's what we are. Because we are not able to zero in on that. To see Atman see the potential for action in Atman. And whenever you see action, understand Atman is behind it. Then you will be a successful person at anything. You could be a scamster, you could be a banker, you could be a sannyasi. Whatever it is that you're doing, if you achieve that serenity, you will be outstandingly successful. Now, don't take that scamster literally. You know why? Because it is impossible that your mind will be calm if you're doing negative things. But theoretically, yes. Many years back there was this bank robbery there was a movie about it. And they did everything perfectly. They did absolutely everything perfectly, well planned. And at the end, there was a slope. So they had this huge amount of cash that was packed into that truck, which they had stolen from the bank. And they stopped at the slope for something, food or something. And you know what happened? That driver had forgotten to put the handbrake on. And the truck started rolling down the hill. And when it went bang into something, the currency notes were flying all over the place. And these guys just looked at each other because they can't go and say that it's ours because it's stolen. So what it means is that if your intention is impure, negative, bad, somewhere down the line you're going to make a mistake. However brilliant you will never achieve your objective. So therefore, the starting point should be righteousness. Starting point should be you must have good intentions. And that these good intentions are just not there. Suddenly you find somebody behaving in a good manner and you say, oh, such a relief to see goodness in the world. It could be a simple thing, like a school kid explaining something to his classmate, which the classmate doesn't understand, and they have a test. So instead of feeling competitive, that I'll do better than you, he sits and very patiently explains to his classmate, this is it, this is goodness, this is unselfishness. So from simple things like this to sacrificing your life, like in the Tale of Two Cities, is this lawyer who understands I'm a useless guy. I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drunkard, I'm not worth much. And here is an aristocrat, French aristocrat, who's about to be guillotined. He's totally innocent. And his wife and child are waiting for him. And mind you, this lawyer is in love with that girl, his wife, from before she got married. Sacrificial guy. Even at the time that the French nobleman was courting her, he understood that she'll be happier with him. I'm a useless guy. So he withdrew and allowed their romance to flourish. Who would do that? And in the end, he gives his life. He changes places with a prisoner who's about to be guillotined the next day. And the only person who sees this is a 16-year-old girl in the opposite cell who's afraid of dying. She is also going to be guillotined the next day. She's afraid of dying, but when she sees this, she's totally inspired. She says, here I am afraid of being guillotined, and here this man comes and volunteers to be guillotined. And the next morning when they are carted to the guillotine, she's still afraid. So she looks up at him and says, will you please hold my hand? I'm afraid. And he holds her hand tight. And that is how he gives her the strength to face her fate. Now when you hear this, if nobody is asking you to give your life, please don't worry. But it inspires you, right? Anybody does an act of goodness, it inspires you that this is the quality of goodness. This is the power of goodness. And we must embrace that. We must live it. We must be a beacon light for the world, which is so full of rubbish, stupidity, selfishness, ego. So, verse 19.
यस्य सर्वे समारम्भाः कामसङ्कल्पवर्जिताः ज्ञानाग्निदग्धकर्माणं तमाहुः पण्डितं बुधाः.
The wise call that person a sage whose endeavors are free from kama, desire, and sankalpa, expectation, whose actions are burnt by the fire of knowledge. Now look at the construction of the sentence. The wise call that person a sage. See, it's like this. I'm assuming you don't know anything about cricket other than watching it on TV. And you say so-and-so is a good cricketer, it has no meaning. But if Rahul Dravid says this boy has a future, it carries weight, right? Because he was the coach of the Indian team. Similarly here, the wise call him a sage. Means he's got the backing of a self-realized person. So what happens is, in Vedanta, in the Bhagavad Gita, in spiritual life, you don't stop action. In the name of spirituality, most people stop action. They give up their jobs, they wind up their businesses. And what do? Go to the Himalayas and stare at the mountains. That is not spirituality. What is spirituality? Action goes on. Then what do you give up? What do you sacrifice? You renounce the craving for it, craving for the action, the desire for the action, and the dependence on the result, anxiety for the fruit. If you clip these two, you've got perfect action. And you have a person who is a master. Because then you're not dependent on the world. You have complete mastery over yourself and your action, right? No one can take that away from you. But if you have a desire to do something, then you're dependent on the world. Because whether you are able to do it or not is not in your hands. And fruit, of course, is not in your hands. Yet, we get totally involved in the action. And this concept of doership, I am the doer. And enjoyership. So, karta, bhokta is what takes away from action and makes you miserable. This morning, I spoke to someone. It was her birthday. So I said, how are you celebrating? And she told me, what celebration? We are home only. I said, why? Because she sounded a bit down. She said, my husband is in depression. Now you tell me. And then she was saying, we give him antidepressants and he sleeps. So whenever he's awake, he's depressed or he's asleep. What a life. Huh? And yet, whatever be his circumstances, there are so many things in life to be happy about, to be cheerful about. Just see the sun rise every morning. Has it ever occurred to you? The sun is unaffected by what happens in the world. So there may be a tsunami, there may be an earthquake, there may be war in Ukraine, there may be tariffs, there could be anything. Sun rises. So you look at the sun, you get that vitality, energy, cheer. Versus when it's dark and overcast, when there's no light, it's depressing, no? There is no reason to be depressed. Once you get there, you're finished. You're on medication. And what does medication do? What do these things do? They just put you to sleep. Terrible life. How do you get there? Extreme selfishness. Think of yourself constantly. This is what happens. We don't realize it. And all of us are doing it all the time, right? Actions get burnt by the fire of knowledge. What do you mean by action gets burnt? Action means, so when a philosopher says action, it doesn't mean the physical action. He means desire that backs the action, the thought that created the desire, and the vasana which fueled it in the first place. So when you say action gets burnt, what you mean is vasana gets burnt. How? Fire of knowledge. So knowledge sublimates your vasanas. When you get knowledge of the higher, you understand the futility of the lower. And you yourself must compare your own experiences. Like making a conscious effort to reach out to someone who's in trouble, helping, versus going shopping for yourself and buying a branded product. You see the result. How you feel when you go out and help someone, how do you feel when you buy something for yourself? How long does it last? So from your own experience you must learn. So sublimation is that through knowledge you don't need to actually fulfill the desire. It goes away through knowledge. That's how we've overcome so many desires, right? In childhood you had 1,000,000 desires for toys. Do you have them now? How do they go away? You didn't go around fulfilling every desire. You just grew. This is what it's talking about. You grow to a higher state, you burn your vasanas. That knowledge burns the vasana. And they get exhausted. How to get there? How do you begin? Scan your likes and dislikes with your intellect. Intellect must be in place. So the intellect says, I like sweets. So I like a chocolate, I like chocolate cake, I like dessert, I like mithai. The intellect must come in and say, fine, what is the price you're going to pay for it? I don't mean in terms of money. What is the price you're going to pay for it? In terms of your glucose levels are going to go up, you may get diabetes, you may fall ill, you will put on weight. There's so many things associated with it. And then you decide, is the pleasure of eating the chocolate worth all this? If so, go ahead. Otherwise, refrain. Put in an element of control. Like you say, weekdays I will not eat, weekends I will eat, weekdays I will not drink, I will drink over the weekend. Something. That is the use of the intellect. Scan your desires, your likes and dislikes through the intellect, and then do whatever the intellect says.
When it said that vasanas can go, do they permanently go? For example, I grow as a child, from a child, and then the vasanas for toys too. But then when I take birth again, then I again go to the same cycle. So do they come back or?
See, from one birth to the other, let's not compare for the time being. In one lifetime, you know that they go. Even from one lifetime to another, you carry your vasanas with you. So if you have risen to a higher level, then at a very young age, you understand the futility. So you may play with toys, you may play games with other kids, because that's a process you have to go through. But you don't get that involved or attached. And you grow pretty fast, like Shankaracharya at the age of 8 is supposed to have taken sannyas. That's an extreme example. But you can see among children, some children are very attached, it is very difficult to manage. Some children are very, very cool about it. Next verse, 20.
त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासङ्गम् नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रयः कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किञ्चित् करोति सः.
Having forsaken attachment to the fruit of action, Nityat Truptaha, always satisfied, not dependent on anything, such a one does nothing, though performing action. So, verse 19 says, you are free from the actions of the world. Verse 20, this verse talks about how you achieve harmony with external things, external situations. Next verse 21 shows how you achieve harmony with reference to internal storms in your mind. And 22 talks about harmony with reference to the effects of your action. So here he is talking about karma phala sangam, attachment, clinging attachment to the fruit from before. Even before the fruit comes, you are attached to it. So then there is a tremendous attachment, and if you don't get it, there is a huge down that you go through, disappointment, frustration. And the cause is action. So to the extent your mind is on the future, to that extent your mind is not on the present. You're not concentrating on the present. You make mistakes, and that leads to failure. So you must understand that the present action itself is future fruit. Right? When a tennis player is at match point, the ability to switch off from the result, because either he wins the Wimbledon, US Open, or he loses. There is no third option, right? So to the extent his mind goes to the future, will I get it, won't I get it? He is not concentrating on the present, gets out. At match point, he's played brilliantly till then. So at match point, who wins depends not on who is more skilled, depends on whose mind is on the present. Fruit is beyond your control. It depends on so many factors over which you have no control. Action is under your control. So focus on what you have control over. There's no point thinking of something over which you have no control. From the philosophical standpoint, the fruit is the cumulative effect of all your past actions. Past is over and done with, you can't do anything about it. Present, you have control. Do the present wholeheartedly with full concentration. Even if you fail, it's okay. Like a student who has been wasting his time the whole year, one day or a few days before the exam, studies well. That's not enough. So what happens in the test? He doesn't do well. So what do you tell that student? Don't worry. You have to only see that your effort has been more than in the past. And keep putting in effort. You will make up for the past lapses and emerge successful. Similarly in our lives. See, just putting in hard work for one day is not going to erase the past. Past life of indifference or whatever it is. Or laziness. But you consistently put in effort, you will get there. So how must you look at it? My present action is good. It's wholehearted. It's the best that I can perform. If I continue like this, I will erase my past and create a brilliant future. So such a person, now once you understand this philosophy, you will never be heartbroken. You'll never be disappointed. Because you are not dependent on the fruit. Your happiness rests in the present action over which you have 100% control. Yeah.
It's the goal which you say, which drives you to action. It's that goal for which you are acting. And at that point in time, you are telling me that forget about the goal and think about the action only.
Yes. See, he's brought about an important point. The point is that unless you have a fruit in mind, a goal in mind, you will not act. Right? So his point is, and now you're telling me, give up the fruit. And how will I act? So how it goes is like this. Your intellect fixes a goal, fruit. Then you work out a plan of action. While you're performing unit action, each action, at that time your attention should be on the action, not on the fruit. Right? Before you act, you tell yourself, I am acting for the fruit. That's the goal. So all my actions are directed towards the goal. But while you're performing each action, your attention is on the present and not on the fruit. After the action is over, then you can analyze how did I perform, how much closer am I to the goal. So every action should be like that. Of course you fix a goal. Without a goal you won't act. But with the goal, you can't act. If your attention is on the goal, action gets flawed. So, now, if your happiness, this is another very important point. If your happiness is resting on a future achievement, means Your happiness is always in the future. Then what happens? In the present, you're never happy. You get it? And that is a silly way of going about life. So you will never be happy. So that's why we say we are all suffering from the JATC syndrome. Happiness is just around the corner. So you say, if only, my daughter gets married, then I'll be happy. Or my son gets a good job, then I'll be happy. Or whatever it is. Now, when your attention is on the future, you're not looking at what you have in the present. So you don't enjoy it, you're not happy. And wherever you are dependent on other factors beyond your control, you're dependent on the weather, you're dependent on how other people react, how will you be happy? Independent. And as a country, we should assert that. Hey, you do what you like. We will find our salvation. And don't allow external circumstances to put you down. I met a lady last week who said they manufacture automobile components and 50% of their sale is to the United States. Which means what? Now that's gone. But she said, it doesn't matter, the rest of the world is there. That's the spirit you must have. And even if you put in effort and you lose miserably, this year is a total loss. You make huge losses. Okay? You're in business, right? What does business mean? Profit and loss. 20 years consecutively, every year you've made tremendous profit. 1 year you make a loss, you're crying. Then you should not do business. You know what you should do? Take a job in Mantralaya. No loss at all. But you will not make profit. You can't have your cake and eat it. So, this is the thing. Then he says, Nitya Trupta, always content. Because you're self-sufficient. You don't need the world to add to your contentment. You're fulfilled. You feel a sense of fulfillment in the performance of whatever it is that you're doing, however small it is. If it is your lot to cook for the family, find fulfillment in that. If it is your lot to be a street sweeper, find fulfillment in that. There are people like that, There's a street sweeper who used to sweep streets 20 years ago, outside CCI. And he was so cheerful. He's the only sweeper I've seen, street sweeper, who used to sweep under cars. You know what they do now? Around the car they sweep. So below the car all the muck is still there. And as he was doing his job, he used to greet every morning walker. Have something nice to say to every person. And every day I would see him there. Not a day was he disappointed, depressed, agitated, quiet, nothing. So, after seeing him for years, after that he must have retired. I said, how does he find it in him to be happy just sweeping streets? And here are the morning walkers, chairmen, managing directors of companies pulling long faces. That's the thing. Nirashihi. Your internal engine is not revved up with desires. It's not, your intellect is not throbbing with plans and schemes. You're content. So, intellect is not yearning, mind is not craving, body is not running after sensual pleasures. You are at peace with yourself. You must imagine a situation like this, because we are never free from this, isn't it? Either you're after some sensual pleasure. On your way here to the class to study the Bhagavad Gita, you see a bhel wala and eat bhel. Huh? I have nothing against bhel. You can eat as much as you want, but that's not in this. I'll answer that. So, desire is not the problem. The problem is the lust, the greed, the craving, the passion for it, which altogether agitates the mind. You see, whatever it is you want in life is really not there. In the Ramayana, Sita is presented as the individual, you and me. Huh? Sita was completely, totally fulfilled and happy, irrespective of whether she was enjoying the luxuries of the palace life or going through the rigors of Vanvas, living in the forest. Her problem started when her mind went away from Rama to the golden fleeting deer. Rama means Atman. So all this she was able to go through because her attention was on Ram. The moment it slipped from Ram to what? Golden fleeting deer. You may say, I don't like deer. That's not it. Deer represents everything that is DEAR to you. All sense objects of the world are golden, attractive, fleeting, passing. You fall for it. See, this is the thing. Ram told her, it is not what you think it is. Give it up. She didn't listen. And you all know, when the wife insists, you have no choice but to give it. So he also gave it. He said, okay, I'll get it for you. It turned out to be a Rakshasi. And this is it, friends. You think happiness lies in that luxury car. You think happiness lies in a holiday abroad. You think happiness, I don't know, in branded goods, so on and so forth. It's not there. How do you know that? Look at people who achieve that. You can see, no? Are they happy? You know what they're craving for? Simple homemade food that the lady of the house has cooked. Because they don't eat, they eat luxurious food, but it is not cooked with the heart. It is cooked by somebody you pay to make, some chef, some Maharaj. That doesn't taste the same as someone cooking with the heart. That's why Howard Schultz, the chairman of Starbucks, told every employee, every barista making coffee out there, he said, whenever you make coffee for your clients, for your customers, don't forget to put this very important ingredient in it. And what is it? Pour your heart into it. And it is so true. Anything you do with your heart turns out excellent. Heart means what? You must love what you're doing. You must love the person for whom you're doing it. If that is missing, then there's no point. So, this is it. Therefore, your happiness should be here and now. Swami Ramatirtha emphatically said, if you are not happy as you are, where you are, you will never be happy. So, whatever it is you have right now, wherever you are, learn to be happy. The body and mind must be under the control of the intellect. Otherwise, you've had it. Verse 21.
निराशीर्यत चित्तात्मा त्यक्तसर्वपरिग्रहः शारीरं केवलं कर्म कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम्.
So, without nirashi, he does not mean hopeless. Nirashi means without expectation, with body and mind controlled. How many of us have any element of control over the body or the mind? Huh? Body demands something, you succumb to it. Mind is even worse. Mind takes a fancy for something and you fall for it. There's a guy in Delhi whose daughter went to South Africa for a holiday. Just a holiday with friends. And she messaged her dad, "Dad, I'm here in Cape Town. I think we should buy this vineyard." So off the father goes and buys a vineyard in South Africa. You know? Now there's nothing wrong in buying the vineyard, but you don't pick up businesses on just a whim of your daughter. It's like in Shakespeare, Brutus says, "Should I tell the people that Caesar is waiting for his wife to get a better dream?" It's like that. Mind gets attached to random things. See, the mind is weak. So it's like sticking plaster because it's so dependent, it's not self-sufficient. So wherever it goes, whatever you do, it gets stuck there. This is attachment. You go somewhere for 5 days, you get attached there. And then you want to bring back everything. How do you know your mind is like that? Wherever you travel, you should be able to come back with the same weight in your bag as you went. Does that happen? No. You buy so many things that they don't fit into your bag, and then there are people who sit on the bag just to shut it. And then you go to check in, you have excess baggage, so you pay through your nose for excess baggage. Then you come here and you get caught at customs. Is it worth it is the question. And in the bargain, your suitcase also breaks because you've sat on it to shut it. This is the condition of the mind. So, having abandoned all possessions. Now these verses create trouble. When he says having abandoned all, tyakta sarva parigraha, he doesn't mean giving up possessions. How do you know that? It is not physical objects that create a problem. It is your mind's association with that object. You could have the whole world like King Janaka, but have no sense of possessiveness towards anything. How do we know that? His guru was the sage Ashtavakra. And when you benefit from this knowledge, you help in spreading the word. So King Janaka organized Ashtavakra's lectures outside the city. Right? It was peaceful, serene. And for the public. So the public would go and he also would go. Occasionally, he would be a few minutes late and Ashtavakra would wait for King Janaka to come. So you know what the public is. They started gossiping. Arey, Ashtavakra has value for the king, he has special this thing for the king. Ashtavakra came to know that these people are gossiping. So one day in the middle of the lecture, with his yoga shakti, he created a fire in the city. And they all saw the fire, and all the people went rushing to collect their belongings. And when they went there, they realized there is no fire. It was an illusory fire that he had created. So they went back, and to their amazement, they saw Ashtavakra had continued with his lecture because there was only one person in the audience who had not moved. And who was that? King Janaka. So why did he do this? To prove to the people that you guys, you have a few things, you're attached to them. Here is a king who has everything. He's completely detached, not possessive. So you are not possessive towards your possessions. You can possess the whole world. But if you're possessive about even one thing, you're not a spiritual person. Then performing only physical action. Oh, that's a beautiful concept. You're just doing what you ought to do. In the spirit of nature. A dog barks because that is its nature. A nightingale sings because that is what it ought to do. A peacock dances because that's its lot. Similarly, do what you ought to do. If you're a carpenter, do carpentry. If you're an electrician, do your electrician's work. If you're a plumber, do plumbing. If you're an IT professional, do that. If you're a lawyer, practice law. Switch off from everything else. You must not have a craving for it. You must not have a dislike for anything. Because you understand, I have nothing to do with all of this. My mission, my place in life is somewhere else. And that is where I have to go to. It's like you are, let's say, going from here to New York. And Emirates says, you go via Dubai, we'll give you 2 nights stay and you can shop till you drop. So you stay in a hotel, 5-star hotel for 2 days. Are you attached to anything in it? Huh? If the kettle for boiling water is not working, what do? You just call housekeeping and say, replace the kettle. That's it. You don't get attached to the room. You don't say, what a view I get from the room. I want to stay here forever. That is it. So you view your own home like a hotel room. Because you understand you are only on transit visa in the world. You're not a green card holder. You're not a permanent resident in the world. Why? Because someday you're dying. And when you die, you're not going to carry anything with you. So have the spirit of a transit visitor. Don't get involved in the politics. Don't get involved in anything. And then you come out of it clean. Otherwise, now what is happening? Because you're attached, because you're possessive, because you... See, it's like this. You're sitting in a chair here. When it's time to go, suppose you've sat on Fevicol, what will you do? You'll get up with the chair. Then with the chair, you get into the car. Then you get attached to the car. So when you go you can't move out of the car. You have to go with the car and the chair into your home. This is what you do. You collect attachments. And then it gets to a state where it's so much that it weighs you down, you die. And then you're born again. Again you start this process of collecting things. So that's why he says this. Performing only physical action. Such a one does not incur sin. Sin means mental agitation. So living in the world doesn't cause stress. Many people say, oh, nowadays life is so stressful. Life is not stressful. How can life be stressful? Your mind is stressful because of the wrong attitude in life. Actions go on. You don't create vasanas. You know, when you drive a car and the wheels of the car move, especially during the monsoon, what happens? It throws the muck back onto the car. So you have what is known as mud guard. The mud guard absorbs the muck and your car remains clean, at least relatively. Internally, mentally, you need to insert mud guards where you prevent the mind from collecting vasanas and desires. How do you do that? There are three kinds of actions: selfish, unselfish, selfless. As long as you are driven by selfish desires, like I want money, I want name, I want fame, I want a following, I want this, that, and the other for myself, you're stuck. There's no mud guard. You attract the mud. Unselfish means you act according to your vasanas, but it doesn't boomerang back on you as more vasanas. So it's self-purifying. And that is so wonderful because every act you perform, you emerge from that a slightly better person, a slightly purer individual. And that is so important. And then comes selfless, where you shift gears completely to God. Whatever I do is for God. This is a prayer that millions of Indians through centuries repeated. Even now, it's done. Where you say that whatever I do, see, hear, feel, I do it only for you. That element of surrender is there. And so then what happens is, whatever you do, you're untouched by the world. Because your focus is on God. Such a person does not incur sin. Next verse, 22.
यदृच्छालाभसन्तुष्टः द्वन्द्वातीतो विमत्सरः समः सिद्धावसिद्धौ च कृत्वापि न निबध्यते.
Supremely content with whatever comes unsought, risen above the pairs of opposites, free from envy, balanced in success and failure, one is not bound despite acting. So this verse talks about harmony with reference to the effects of action, the result. Santushta, if you are content and there is no effort, no work, what is that state? Tamas. Where there is effort but longing and selfishness, that is the state of Rajas. But where there is effort but no longing, Sattva. That is why Christ said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." It's all you have to do. You don't have to do any earth-shaking thing. Just purify yourself. Of what? Selfishness. So you reach that state of Sattva, which is effortless excellence. Without a strain, whatever you do becomes perfect. And how does it become like that? Because your mind is free from agitation. When the mind is serene and calm, intellect is sharp, actions brilliant. So such a person, a sattvic person, whatever he does turns out perfect. So you must reach the state where the intellect is not yearning for anything. You know, our intellect, as against that, you must understand what is going on now. Your intellect is constantly throbbing with ideas, plans, this, that, which doesn't allow you to sleep. Ask any businessman whether he's got that, what do they call, gala, na? A trader in Crawford Market, or a mighty industrialist. Nobody can sleep. They're all popping pills. Why? Because the intellect is so much in overdrive, it doesn't allow you to sleep. And the mind is constantly craving. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. Body again. And we are a generation of sensual people. If foodies to begin with. Wherever you go, there are restaurants. If a proper restaurant is not there, some guy on the street will be selling food. And that is a no-brainer. You will definitely make profit. That's what it is. So here, please remember one thing. When you rise above want, rise above desire, object comes to you. See, if you don't believe me, take a look at people. The really rich guys, they don't seek wealth, they're seeking other things. Then it comes. Yajna Shishta. Yajna Shishta means the remains of sacrifice. What remains after sacrifice is tremendous profit. And such people who perform yajna get freed from all sin. Means vasana, desire. Like the poet has said, our dear delights are often such, exposed to view but not to touch. The sight of foolish heart in flames, we long for pineapples in frames. So you see a Mercedes, you see a BMW and you say, I want. Arey, you want? To buy that Mercedes or BMW, you have to sell your flat. Then where will you live? On the streets? And buy a Mercedes. Exposed to view but not to touch. The sight of foolish heart in flames. We long for pineapples in flame. Then he gives three kinds of people. One just looks. You go to a showroom. That's it. One breaks the glass and cuts his fingers. The Rajasic person tries his best but gets only mental agitation. But they whom truth and wisdom lead can gather honey from a bee. What a beautiful statement. See how it tallies 100% with Vedanta. And he hasn't studied. From his own research, he's come up with it. So if you are led by truth and wisdom, then you can gather honey from a weed. Where is the honey? Not in the weed. It's inside you. What it means is, once you have this honey inside you, once you have this happiness inside you, you are happy with anything. That is why we say, you could be married to an absolute angel and be miserable. Or you could be married to the worst specimen of humanity and be perfectly happy. That's what Sant Tukaram was. That's what Socrates was. See, we are trying to do it the other way. We're trying to correct the world. It's never going to happen. Dvandvatita. Rise above physical, emotional and intellectual pairs of opposites. The world is full of pairs of opposites. Birth, death, joy, sorrow. all this honor, dishonor, and this goes on. Sometimes for no reason at all, people will boost you and they worship you. And again for no reason at all, they'll push you down. You must be equal to both. Understand, this is the way of the world. Vimatsaraha, free from envy. You have no negative emotion in, like, there was a person who passed away and his friend said he did not have one negative bone in his body. Means no negativity. Because as long as, whatever be the other person, as long as you harbor hatred in your heart, you are going to be miserable. Balanced in success and failure. Because you're focused on the action, not on the fruit. Then you don't create vasanas. Vasanas agitate the mind. So no agitation of the mind, no bondage. You're free. Next verse.
गतसङ्गस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसः यज्ञायाचरतः कर्म समग्रं प्रविलीयते.
Gatasangasya, free from attachment, liberated, with mind established in knowledge, acting for yajna, sacrifice, one's entire action is exhausted. So, Gatasangasya, you're free from attachment to external conditions, verse 20, internal situation, verse 21, effects of action, verse 22. How do you achieve that? You're mukta, free from the world. So what connects you to the world? Desire, attachment. You're free from that. How? You're established in knowledge. So it's so important to gain knowledge. Every day. See, just coming here every Wednesday. And that too, everybody does not come every Wednesday. Once in a way, you wake up on a Wednesday and say, there's some class going on, let me go. Very casual approach. It's not going to work. There has to be dedicated constancy of thought. Established in knowledge. Yajnaya, all action performed for sacrifice, for a higher ideal, then the entire thing gets dissolved. So yajna is the game changer. So what is yajna? The ability to work in a spirit of service and sacrifice for a higher cause. Whatever that cause may be. It could be the organization you work for, it could be the community you live in, or country. See, here in our society, there is no thought of the higher. Last year, when I was in the United States, someone told me that, Americans are givers. There's a huge amount of donation that is given. Billions and trillions of dollars are given as donation. And these are not the rich people. 60% of this, or 80% I think, comes from ordinary middle class families who give. How many of us give charity? To anything, anybody. This concept of giving is gone from our psyche. And yet, in the Rig Veda, there is a huge portion on dana, charity. Every other society, every other community, it is mandated that you must give 10% of your income to charity. This is not tax, apart from income tax. What do we give? When we have lectures, people attend 4 days. There is a huge cost in organizing the lecture. And what donation do they give? 10 rupees? You must consider when you go to a movie, how much do you pay just for the ticket? How much? INOX if you go, how much does it cost? 500 for 1.5 hours or whatever, one movie. Here you come 4 evenings and you give 10 rupees. It's better not to give. It's a shameful thing. You must develop this attitude of giving, not because the world needs your service, because you need to give. You owe it. If a company does not pay dividend to its shareholders, it cannot exist. Right? Because they are the owners of that company, not you. You are only a servant. Who are the owners? Similarly, who are the real owners of your life? The shareholders, the stakeholders are the community, the nation, our wonderful heritage. What are you doing to at least give back as a token? You can never repay. How can you repay the great sages who through the centuries retained this knowledge, lived this knowledge and passed it on to future generations? You can never repay. You can't even repay your parents for what they have done for you. And you have the gall to say, my father didn't do what he was supposed to do. Arre, the very fact that he produced you is enough. So, instill this attitude of it. This urge must be there. Whoever you meet, whatever you do, the urge must be there to give. You know, this morning, a lady who cleans our office, she left a bottle of masala for me. Something. And I said, she has the attitude of giving. Every morning she comes, she doesn't bring breakfast only for herself, she shares it with people. She gets lunch for herself, she shares the lunch. And this, I've seen her do this for years together. That is why she has a wide circle of friends. Whatever be her other faults, she is a giver. And therefore God looks after her. You know, in my experience, a maid who works, has given more than millionaires have. That's why she's happy. And the millionaires are unhappy. See, it's not about how much you have. Many years ago, I calculated that every employee gets bonus. Huh? Bonus is what? 1 month's salary per year you get extra. What do you do with that? I can go for a holiday, I can buy a refrigerator, I can buy a microwave, I don't know what you spend it on. But it's free, no? Free money you're getting. Oh, extra bonus. So I decided every year I would give 1 month's income to Vedanta. And you know what happened? I was actually called and said, are you sure you can afford it? I said, yes. Are you sure you want to give it because we haven't put your check in the bank yet? I said, yes. And it turned out that I was the highest giver, the greatest donor. And yeah, my 1 month's income was nothing compared to other people. But still they did not give. So you should use this as a benchmark. 1 month's income. Give. To a cause, to some place where you benefit from it. Now don't say, I bought a car for my son that I gave. That's not giving. Okay, thank you.